It's the most important course that we offer. And for a lot of people, they think that this course, the first course that they take to get their real estate license, is the most important course. And in terms of the grand scheme of things, getting your real estate license is an enormous milestone. But please understand that this course that the state of Florida requires you to take to get your real estate license does not necessarily teach you how to be a successful real estate professional. Rather, the focus of this course, you learn a lot about real estate, but primarily focusing on the laws, the rules, and the basic principles and practices that are going to be tested on your state exam. Because if you don't pass your state exam, you don't get the luxury of being able to practice real estate. You need to get that real estate license. You need to be certified by the state of Florida through, number one, completing this course education requirement. Unless you are an attorney in good standing with the Florida Bar, or you have a degree in real estate. So if you specifically have a real estate degree, you'll be exempt from this course, as well as if you're an attorney in good standing with the Florida Bar. However, if you're not an attorney in good standing with the Florida Bar and you don't have a degree in real estate, don't go get a degree in real estate. That's going to take you years. This course, you could have it done in days. Not years. It's a 63-hour course, but what it does, it's a lot of information. This textbook that goes along with our instructor-led programs, we have 3 different instructor-led formats: live in person, live online, and then 24/7 video-based on demand. And any one of those formats, we follow this textbook, and even our self-paced text-based, that's our 4th option that we have to get your real estate license. That course also goes through all the same information. It's just all self-contained without the book. But this book is in a phenomenal representation of the amount of information that is contained in this course here. So 522 pages is the official count on this book here. 522 pages. 522 pages. If you think back to going to school, you probably had books like this that you would cover over an entire semester or over an entire year even. But you're going through this course, and we have programs as quick as 7 days. Because ultimately, this is chock full of laws and rules. And that's why I really recommend the instructor-led programs, or even if you have the text-based self-guided, I would still recommend getting this textbook, because this is a phenomenal resource for your future as it relates to laws. I literally just skimmed through right here. And so in the column, in the margin right here, let's go over to this camera. You'll probably be able to see it better. So right over here, we've got the laws. So this is more of a law reference manual about practicing real estate legally. That's the way you want to think about this here. And if you pass the exam, that's the state certifying that you are able to practice real estate legally. But do you know how to practice real estate is the bigger question. And you might think, well, I learned that contracts have to be in writing and signed. I learned that the essential elements of a contract are blah, 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 blah. But these are fundamentals, and there's going to be further training that you'll do with whatever brokerage you join, with the Association of Realtors if you choose to join them. But in terms of knowing what those next steps are for your real estate license, that's where this curriculum comes in. So this is your post-licensing course. And this is the book that represents it. And you can already see, if I hold these up side by side here, it doesn't look like an extreme difference, especially though I'm holding that one there. But this one is thinner. So we got 522 pages of laws, rules, basic principles, and practices. Whereas over here, what are we, 383 pages. 383 pages of business information. If we read through the units that are in this course here. So some of my favorites, the first one that I think is probably the most important thing that you could do as soon as you have a real estate license, whether it's part of this course or not, but if you don't know how to do this otherwise, doing this specifically for real estate, you'll learn how to do this through this course. And it's Unit 3 in here, business planning and time management. So business planning and time management is essential when you're a self-employed person. Now, you might be making real estate work for you as a full-time agent. So maybe many of you want to become a full-time agent or are going to start right off as a full-time agent. That's going to be something that you're talking about in your business plan. And not necessarily like talking about, but laying out the details, laying out the frameworks, understanding commission splits, and not just doing a basic calculation of those, but understanding how many homes you have to sell to hit the goal it is that you're after. And being able to do this math so that way when you go to make further investment and actually activating your real estate license, that you're making the smartest move possible. Because if you're operating just off of this information, you are very ill-informed. And we have people that are from other states that already have a real estate license, have already had a real estate career for years, and they know better than anybody that they should take this course right away. Not just because it is a requirement, that if you wait about 18 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, but at least 18 months, if that time goes by with having a real estate license and you haven't done this, you pass your expiration date, your license goes null and void. So your entire investment into knowing, understanding, being able to pass the exam on this 522-page course here, that all goes away. And if you want to get your real estate license again because opportunity presents itself and you wish you never lost it in the first place, guess what? You've got to do whatever the latest and greatest version of this is. And the one thing that I've noticed over time in terms of the licensing process is it doesn't necessarily get simpler, it gets more complicated. They add more rules, they add more laws, and things that could be relevant to your exam. Now, it's not drastic changes, but I can't predict the future. I don't know exactly what the licensing process is going to look like in 10 years, but what I do know is if you got your real estate license today and you did this first course to renew it, and then the course you have to do every 2 years after that is literally a 30-question open book exam. It's the simplest thing to complete, and if you actually do a live seminar of it, there's not even an exam. And so there's no reason you should lose your real estate license because, again, whatever the licensing process is 10, 15, 20, 30 years in the future, you don't have to worry about that as long as you still are maintaining your real estate license. So you might not be using it currently right now, but the knowledge is invaluable for yourself as a homeowner, for yourself as an investor, for yourself as an entrepreneurial-minded person that's trying to plan an alternative future based on the trajectory that they're on. And so going back to what's in this post-licensing, so the business planning and time management, that's going to be eye-opening for so many of you. If you have not yet done this post-licensing and you have a real estate license, you're doing yourself an extreme disservice because you're trying to figure out the world of real estate with a blindfold on. And this course is what helps you remove the blindfold. And you might say, well, I learned so much information in here. I had a great instructor. Look, you could have the best instructor in the world, but the curriculum is not that of how to be a successful real estate agent. It's how to practice real estate legally, which is what the state is primarily concerned with. Then for your continued education, they let that information, we have a lot more freedom as a school over what will qualify as post-licensing education compared to the very specific syllabus we're following with the pre-licensing course. So business planning and time management. This is essential because what it's going to help you do is project your income, project your expenses, be able to do some budgeting. So that way you're not being surprised by some hidden fee or some hidden cost or some hidden expense that you have. You're going to this fully informed. And when you go into this fully informed, especially when you maintain the momentum, it's exciting that you just got your real estate license. Now the real fun begins. Now the real learning begins. What can you do with this real estate license to actually make the most of it? So business planning and time management. Now section 2, this is chock full of information that's going to be essential to anybody practicing real estate. So unit 4 is prospecting for listings. Unit 5, pricing property to sell. Now you might say, I learned about appraisal in pre-licensing, and you're correct. There's a whole chapter dedicated to appraisals, but it's the fundamentals of appraisals as it relates to estimating value. This course teaches you how to estimate the value, of course. It relies on those same principles you learned in pre-licensing, the basic appraisal concepts, but now you're factoring in the current market conditions, the homes on the market in the neighborhood, how long they've been on the market, how many are pending, how many are expired, how many have been sold. This is amazing information that when I started in real estate, to give you a little bit of my personal story, when I got my real estate license all these years ago, I didn't do this course right away. And I was going through real estate blindfolded. I ended up paying like $1,200 for this sales boot camp workshop 90-day program thing, where when I finally took this course, I realized the stuff, at least the stuff I took away from it, was right here in this course I was supposed to take when I got my license. But I waited. I put it off as long as I possibly could, right till before my deadline, before I went and got this done. And then I was like, wow, I guess I probably should have took this course right away. But all people told me was you should just do it before your deadline, otherwise you're going to lose your license. Well, I'm like, well, my deadline's a long time away. Why do I need to do it now? Great question, John. And no one gave me the answer that this is the information that's going to help me make money in real estate. So I had to learn a lot of lessons the hard way, the expensive way, by losing clients, losing deals, contracts falling apart, not understanding contracts, not even understanding fully my role, not knowing how to present offers, not being prepared, not knowing what expenses to account for. And I would have been light years more prepared for what I was walking into if I had did this course first and foremost. It was an extreme disservice to myself that I did not do this. This isn't going to teach you everything there is to know. There's going to be so much training that you could do over and beyond this, but this is going to be the foundation. Before you can build a house, you have to have a strong foundation to build it upon. Having the real estate license is just your permission to begin building your real estate career. That's the state of Florida giving you permission to be able to begin building your career. And you start by, again, laying the groundwork, laying that initial strong foundation of all these different topics. So we've got prospecting for listings, pricing property to sell, making the listing presentation. Look, people have said you have to list to last. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you're a full service practicing real estate agent, having listings is you having inventory. If you want to run an ad about all the homes you have for sale, have homes for sale. If you don't have homes for sale, how are you going to run an ad about homes for sale? And that's where you see people run ads that say, I could sell your home, or you could do something so much better and show them you selling all these other homes. And that's how you have to get listings, and that will give you inventory, and that listings will help you get more listings. Those listings will help you get buyers, not just for your listings, but for other properties that aren't your listings. So listings are extremely essential tool for real estate professionals. You could be both a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, a listing agent, and most new agents are, because as a new agent, you're trying to scrounge up as much business as you can to get your business as much off the ground as quickly as possible. But you've got to make sure that you're looking in the right places. You've got to make sure that you have the right mindset, the right thought process, the right way of going about this. And the thing is, you could make so much of this your own, but you shouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel. Having a real estate license doesn't give you the wheel. It gives you the permission to start building the wheel. But if you don't know how wheels are shaped, if you don't know the dynamics of the wheel, you don't know how to build the wheel, how are you going to create the wheel? And more importantly, how do you create the rest of the car? Because that's really what you're after, not just a single wheel. It's not just about finding leads. It's not just about surfacing your clients. It's not just about understanding the inspections, the closing process, the appraisal, the lending side of things, and all these different people that you'll be working with, not just your client, but all these different vendors, and having a strong network of vendors. This is something you'll find in choosing a good brokerage, but you'll be able to better understand what brokerage is going to be the best fit for you, because you'll have brokers trying to actively recruit you. And that's the biggest thing that causes agents to be in that situation where they don't know what they're doing and they find themselves over their head. It's because they haven't done post-licensing yet. They already went and joined the realtors and joined a broker, and they're telling them to do this and they're telling them to do this, and all they remember from their course is a contract has to be in writing and signed. And so you don't want to find yourself over in your head, because that's going to be extremely discouraging for you. Extremely discouraging. And so much so that it might make you never want to take this course. Because if you're like me, you might be saying, well, let's see if real estate is really worth keeping this license. Let me stop you right there. This license is worth keeping. You might not see why and how now, but for the requirement of getting that license, it's all downhill after you get that real estate license. Getting the real estate license, that's the most difficult part of this whole journey here. Passing that state exam, getting the real estate license, making it to that point, that's the most difficult, and that's why so many people misinterpret that as something significant, something important. And it is significant, but it's not nearly as important as this post-licensing curriculum here. So you've got the listing presentation, and then what do you use to secure the listing presentation? To secure the listing contract, and that's your next unit in there. So you're learning all about listings. You're learning about working with buyers, sale and option contracts, writing and presenting offers. So not just that a contract has to be in writing and signed and all the other basics you learn in pre-licensing, but you're learning about how to present this information to a client, how to help them interpret the key points of the contract, how to help interpret if they're the seller and they've got multiple offers, how to go back to a buyer to relay information from the seller, how to negotiate further. Again, this is so much more in tune with actually practicing real estate because there's no state exam for this. There's no state exam. There is an end of course exam, so you could get credit for this. There's an end of course exam that we administer. If you're doing this online, it's an online exam. If you're doing it in person, you do it right there on the last day of class in the classroom. But this, if you could pass the state exam, you'll have no problem passing your post-licensing exam. What you should be more concerned about is how do you take this information and then implement it after you get your real estate license. Yes, you're going to want to make sure you pay attention to what the instructor says is important and need to know for the exam. Of course, don't forget that. But that's going to be so minimal compared to how much the instructor probably said that in this course here. Because so much of this course isn't about that 100-question exam that you've got to take at the end. It's about having the information to build a successful real estate career. So some more of these units we've got in here. Mortgage alternatives. So what if somebody goes to a lender and they can't qualify? Especially in a market like we have today with interest rates being as high as they are, there's some really attractive mortgage alternatives that are less attractive in a low interest rate environment. But given the market that we have right now, those mortgage alternatives are more attractive than ever. Acquiring financing for the property. So primarily this is something done on the lender's side, but you want to be in tune with that. You want to be in communication with the lender. You want to know what you're talking about, and you're going to learn the basics of that right in here. The next section, closing real estate transactions. So yes, you learn about the computations and the math that you got to do for your state exam here, but what you're learning more in this is how you're working cooperatively with the title company, because they're the ones pretty much doing all the math. They're the ones helping you prepare net sheets, helping doing the closing statement, working with the lender, making sure the liens and the titles and everything, all of that, all is perfect and looking good. So a lot of times as a real estate professional, once you get the deal under contract, it's almost more like you're a spokesperson for your client, for the buyer or the seller. You're a spokesperson for them, and you're going around to the different parties, the lender, the title company, maybe the inspector, maybe the appraiser, and making sure everybody's getting their job done on time. Everybody's doing what they need to do. There's not any problems arising. And if there are problems arising, what can we do proactively to prevent them and fix them once they've already happened? That's what our job is, which our job becomes very easy once you get it under contract. And that's the thing that I was intimidated by when I first got started, is I didn't understand that closing process. And so I thought it was only just beginning by getting a property under contract. And so looking back on it, it's almost like subconsciously I was almost trying to talk people out of buying the home. There were so many mistakes that I made that had I took this post-licensing course right away, it would have extremely benefited me. So this is the most important course that we have in terms of make it or break it for your real estate career. Because if you don't do this course, come time, your license goes away. So this literally will break your real estate license if you don't do this course. But if you really want it to make your license, to make your career, to launch and accelerate to unprecedented levels, that's where you want to take this as soon as possible and get the golden nuggets out of this course. And again, why I recommend our instructor-led programs is so you could have this book, you could mark up this book, you could have this as a reference piece to go back to when you want to review your business plan, when you want to tweak your business plan, when you want to update what you're doing for your time management, your prospecting strategies. If we dive a little bit deeper into the prospecting for listings, that's Unit 4 in here. In prospecting for listings, you're learning about all the different sources that you could use to generate listings. And so you've got things, so we've got like this little star in here that breaks down the 5 different points of listings. And as new agents, your primary source of contacts, of deals, is gonna be your sphere of influence. However that may seem to you, 80 to 90% of new agents get their first deal from their sphere of influence. And so you learn tactics in here for working your sphere of influence. But beyond that, you also learn tactics for farming neighborhoods. So you might have heard us talk about on State of Real Estate the concept of farming before. If you haven't yet, go search it on our website. Just search farm or farming. Just like, you know, with the horses and cows, but really it's got nothing to do with horses and cows when we talk about it on State of Real Estate, because what farming is a long-term marketing strategy to where you're developing repetition, you're developing recognition with the prospects in your farm area. So you pick a neighborhood that you want to be known as the specialist, and then you go to work promoting yourself as the specialist through marketing, through postcards, through letters, through door knocking, through community events. You learn more about that in this post-licensing course. It's got some flyer examples. It's got different tracking examples, so that way you could hold yourself accountable. The for sale by owner concept, so working with for sale by owners who think they could do it on their own, but are maybe finding out that they're struggling to do it on their own. How do you effectively convert a for sale by owner? We start talking about that in here. You learn, and there's all these different tactics of ways to follow up with for sale by owners built into this book, into this course. All different examples of how to track this information, setting up different spreadsheets. What happens when you actually get somebody that wants to meet with you? You get an appointment. Quite a bit in here about for sale by owners. You also have the for rent by owners and how you could work that angle as well. You have canvassing and power prospecting and just so much detail in here, using social media we're talking about there. So that prospecting for listings unit is one of my favorite chapters in here, because there's so many ways that you could generate more leads than you even know what to do with. And that's where you start having discussions about, how do I start my own team? How do I even start my own brokerage? And we could help you out with that and getting the broker license. And if you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, you want to speak to one of our advisors, the phone number is 813-333-2676. Again, that's 813-333-2676. All this is confidential, of course, but call into us and reach out and ask whatever questions it is that you have, whether it be about the post licensing. Maybe you haven't done anything yet to get your real estate license, so you will need to take this, for the time being, most important course. Until then, the state allows you now, once you've got your real estate license, to take this more important course. Because if you take this before you get your license, look, the information is still going to be valuable, but not really that much, because if you don't have a real estate license, you can't put this information to work. And nor can you put this information to work, you can also not actually use any of this information unless you have a real estate license. And you don't get credit for this course until you have a real estate license. So this is primarily what you've got to do first and foremost. Get enrolled in the course, and once you get your license, the post-licensing is the number one most important thing it is that you need to do. And again, with this, we have several instructor-led formats, 3 different ones actually. You could do this course live in person. We have instructor locations throughout the Tampa Bay area. We're expanding throughout the rest of Florida as well. But if we're not quite to your area yet, or you're outside of Florida, you can join us live online as well. But you know what? If you've got a busy schedule, if you want to do this at your own pace, 24/7 on demand, you could actually take the course personally with me, where I'll guide you through in a video-based program this entire curriculum, which if you used our video-based on-demand version of the pre-licensing course, it's just like that. And if you want to bundle these together along with all of our exam prep tools, they're going to help you speed up the gap in between, to help take the guesswork out of studying. That's where our Complete Jumpstart Bundle comes in. And with our Complete Jumpstart Bundle, you get your pre-licensing course, you get all of our exam prep tools, so you don't waste any time waiting to pass your exam. You could go right to studying, right to using those as much or as little as you need to get your real estate license. And then you can now move on to your post-licensing course, which again, this is going to be significantly more important than anything you've done up until that point. Even though the only thing that happens when you do this is you renew your license. It doesn't seem like as much of a milestone, but the information that you're going to gain from this post-licensing course is going to far and beyond supersede anything that you've learned so far in terms of what it can actually do for you. Because again, in your pre-licensing, the focus is laws and rules. And so knowing how to practice real estate legally is important. You'll lose your real estate license if you don't practice real estate legally. Okay, important. Understood. But if all you know is how not to break the law, what do you actually do? You might know what not to do. You might know that, well, if I actually eventually someday get a contract that has to be in writing and signed, that has to be agreed by both parties, it's simple, basic stuff that's in there, which there's a lot of information, there's a lot of specifics, which can present this as a challenging obstacle to overcome. And again, that's where our exam prep comes in to help simplify things down, because while this course is 522 pages, the exam prep can sum this information up. We have a workbook that's only about 100 pages long. So it's roughly about 20% of the material. And if you've heard before things like the 80-20 rule, with the 80-20 rule, that 20% is where you're getting 80% of the importance. And it's not like specific units, because every unit in here puts some contribution towards the exam, whether it's just 1% or as much as 12%. But within each one of those sections, there's so much detail when you initially learn this. And why is that detail there? Because we're required to teach it to you. We're required to give you that full context. But the reality is, when it comes to taking your exam, you don't need to memorize every single detail of this course. And so that information will, again, feel maybe overwhelming at first. Maybe you get your real estate license, that feels empowering, and you might be excited and ready to take those next steps. This is that next step. This is the thing that I far and beyond recommend more than anything that you do day one when you get your real estate license. Because every day that goes by of not doing this course is you, for lack of a better term, ignoring the information that is going to teach you how to build a successful real estate career. And the longer you ignore the information that's essential to building a successful real estate career, the more likely you're not going to have a successful real estate career, which is not what we want here. And ultimately, the state gives you somewhere between 18 and 24 months, depending on when exactly you get your real estate license. Let's just call it 18 months. So you could put this off for about a year and a half at least before you lose your license and you lose your entire investment. But let me ask you this. If a year and a half has gone by with you being confused, with you not knowing what to do, with you being not sure what to do with your real estate license and how to use it, well, of course you're not going to be successful. Now, you might see some people that don't take this course and are exceptions to that rule. Don't count on being that exception. Can you be successful? Absolutely. Anything is possible. But are you making it significantly more difficult on yourself by not doing this information? 110%. The sooner you do this information, the more you'll really get energized and excited about what you can do with your real estate license. And the more you could actually relate this to what you're actually doing with your real estate license, the more these concepts begin to come alive. And again, there's got to be further continuing education you do beyond this. But this is going to be, there's a reason they call this post-licensing and they call this pre-licensing. And then everything else after that, they just call continuing education. It doesn't have licensing in the name anymore. Because number one, you do this to prove that you know the laws and rules. Number two, you do this to prove that you could become a professional. That's what we're required to teach you in these post-licensing courses. Is the post-licensing course must cover information about being a professional and topics related to being a real estate professional. So we have a lot more freedom, again, of what information qualifies as post-licensing information. And so again, we could make this curriculum as it fits building a real estate career. And that's exactly what we have here. And that's why I stand before you today on this soapbox about post-licensing and why it is the most important course that we offer. Because again, without this information, you're not reading the instruction manual. Could you put the desk together without the instruction manual? Sure, possibly. But could you maybe put something on backwards? Could you maybe damage something in the process to where it's going to cost you more time and money and headaches and heartaches and pain? Absolutely. So that's why this instruction manual, that's going to be a little bit more complicated than putting a desk together, because this relates to running your real estate business. And so if you do this in an instructor-led program, a live instructor-led program, this is typically going to be a one-week program if you're going for pretty much the whole day. Usually our curriculum, the days are a little bit shorter on the post-licensing just because this is only a 45-hour course. And we even sometimes have, where the longer days, a 4-day program. I think we actually even have one of those schedules coming up around Labor Day this year. So if you do want to get enrolled into one of those live schedules, those classes are filling up quickly. There's a lot of people recently that have gotten their real estate licenses that need to complete these post-licensing requirements. And we always get these classes filling up around the renewal times. Because if you don't do this, you will lose that entire investment it is that you've made. But who I'm speaking to today is those of you who may, again, like myself, find themselves 18 months into this, and ultimately, I had figured out enough with real estate on my own and through the other trainings and programs that I had done to realize, you know what, I do want to keep this real estate license, because that was something I was unsure of when I first got my real estate license, as to whether or not I would want to keep that license, whether or not I want to continue to be a realtor. And so whether or not you want to be a realtor, whether or not whatever it is that you're doing in the future, having that real estate license is not necessarily the thing that has to define you. And if it doesn't define you, that's absolutely fine and okay, but don't lose that advantage that you've gained, that you put the time, money, effort, and work into to not just complete this course, but study and pass the state exam. And again, completing that milestone is huge, but that's not necessarily an indicator of whether or not you'll be a successful real estate agent. The one thing I will say is if you're having a hard time passing it, your tenacity to continue taking that exam again and again and again, that perseverance that you could show in that respect, that might be an indication of your successfulness. If you're determined to make it happen, even though you feel like you can't. And that's what happens if you try to take this exam and you feel like, if you've taken it once, twice, 3, 4 times. I knew somebody once that took it 10 times. And you know what happens? He eventually passed it. I think the 10th or 11th time he passed his exam. And that's probably the record I've heard of somebody taking it. And he was going into it with a strategy, I'm not going to study at all. I was going to take what I learned from the course and go try to pass. And eventually he did. He did actually eventually start studying. So whether it was just him passing or him starting to actually study or having seen exam enough times. So whatever that looks like for you, whether you're using our exam prep to accelerate this process, whether you're just going at this with brute force to take that exam as many times as you need to, the only thing that's maybe an indicator of your success in real estate is the perseverance and determination. Which, if that happens right away, you pass on the first try, we haven't tested that perseverance and determination yet. And if you really want to put it to test, throw this information aside and go try to figure this out all on your own. Because that could be frustrating. That could be demoralizing. That could make you down, depressed, and feel like this is all worthless. And if you're trying to put that desk together with the instruction manual within arm's reach, and you don't pick up the instruction manual, the post-licensing, you leave that instruction manual down and say, I'm going to figure this out. I'm determined to figure this out. And, you know, I guess I got to read that instruction manual, otherwise I'm going to lose my license to put this desk together. But it could just work so much better, so much simpler. You get the desk together so much faster if you take a little bit of time to go through this information. I understand how you might be feeling after going through this course. You might be excited to learn all there is to know about real estate, only to find out that this focuses on the laws and rules and a lot of topics that you're wondering whether or not you're even going to use once you have your real estate license. And will you use every last topic in this post-licensing course? Probably not. You actually probably could. A lot more likely you might use every topic in here than every last topic that's in your pre-licensing course. There's so many people that are going to be the authority in these other areas of expertise, whether it's a real estate attorney, whether it's a title company, whether it's a lender, whether it's an inspector, whether it's an appraiser, whether it's your broker, whether it's the Florida Real Estate Commission legal hotline, or whoever it may be. There's all these different parties and people that you're going to be working with when you're practicing real estate, so you're not alone in this. But you don't want to just go in there and just walk around to everybody, hey, what do I do with this? What do I do here? Go to your broker and say, hey, I got my real estate license. What do I do? I have a brokerage. I actually have multiple broker licenses. And the first thing I ask whenever an agent asks me, what should I do? My first question is, have you completed post-licensing? Whether they're an agent of mine already, they're already with another brokerage, or they haven't joined a brokerage yet, the question is, have you done post-licensing? Because until you do that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And most brokers will see it that way as well. If you have not done your post-licensing, it seems like you've only got one foot in it. Which, to be honest with you, when I started in real estate, I kind of did just have one foot in it. Now, within a few months, I jumped in full body into it. But it still wasn't enough to make it make sense for me to take this course until I actually took it and realized how much valuable information there actually was in here that would benefit me as a professional. And to this day, there's still, just going back to this as I'm reviewing this with you here live on the air, I'm like, man, look at all this stuff in here about for sale by owners. There's so much valuable information that you'll gain in here. Information that has the capacity to make you much more money. Information that has the capacity to give you $1 million idea. Are you going to get $1 million idea based on the laws? Probably not. You could. I don't want to say you can't. But the information in here is going to be so much more basic and, again, focused on the laws and rules. Whereas you upgrade now once you have your license to that post-licensing curriculum, and this is like the 201. This is the information you thought you're going to learn. This is where you start learning the exciting stuff. You got the basics down of the laws and rules so you know what to do so you don't go to jail or lose your real estate license. Now the fun begins. So I encourage each and every one of you to enroll in that post-licensing course as soon as you possibly can. And even if you don't have a real estate license yet, you can enroll with that complete Jumpstart bundle, or even if you just want to purchase the post-licensing a la carte in a prepaid format, so you've got that commitment that you've made yourself. Because there's no sense in taking this post-licensing course if you don't get your real estate license. So the sooner you could accelerate yourself through this process, the sooner it is that you could get the license, the sooner you could find yourself in that course that's going to teach you those things that are going to help you make money with your real estate license. And once you take this course, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Like I said, it's not going to be every last detail down to every last thing. This could be an infinite, never-ending course if we try to cover every last detail that's out there. But it's going to give you enough information to, again, have that foundation to where you're now going to find a brokerage that best aligns with what you're trying to do with your real estate license. That could be referrals. That could be working full service as a real estate agent. In residential, maybe in commercial, maybe it involves you working part-time, maybe it involves you working full-time. Again, maybe it involves you just working in a referral capacity, to where you're not even actually working the deals, and the advantage is there. You're not paying for MLS. You're not paying for realtors. You're significantly lowering your expenses in exchange for a percentage of the commission, and by referring that business out for somebody else to actually do the deals. And having that real estate license, that's one of the reasons why you never want to let that real estate license go. Because as long as you have an active real estate license, you could earn referral fees. Even if those referral fees are from business that's done in other states or even other countries. If you know a friend, a family member, or really anybody that you meet, any lead that you acquire, and there's even lead generation services out there that have broker licenses, and they just basically generate the leads, and rather than charging an upfront fee for these leads, they charge a percentage of the commission. And that can make a lot more sense as a new agent to use an option like that rather than going to subscribe to some lead service, because once you get your license and you join the realtors and all these other things, there's so much public records and public information. There will be salespersons, there will be brokers, there will be recruiters, there will be all of these different people trying to pull you in all these different directions. And if you just let them pull you, you'll never know where you're going. And when you don't know where you're going, you're not going anywhere. So you've got to know where you're going. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have the basics dialed in. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And if you don't take this post-licensing course, you are trying to reinvent the wheel. You're trying to figure out what's already been done by so many people before you. And yes, you can make this your own. You could deviate upon this information, but having this starting point is what's going to give you the basis of how you actually get your first transactions done. You know, so many people want to go shadow a realtor or go follow a realtor around or follow a realtor that they could go buy coffee for and pick their brain and ask them questions. That's not a curriculum. You're not going to learn that way. You're going to experience. You're going to have experiences, and you might pick up some things. You might teach yourself some things here and there along the way. But it's different when it's based in a curriculum that's designed for somebody who just got their real estate license. Because the other side of this is, if you're like me and you wait to right before your deadline to take this course, if you wait to right before your deadline and you've already figured some of this stuff out, this course now becomes remedial. And when it's remedial, it's more of a waste of time. Not a total waste of time, because it's good to get back to basics. And that's why, again, even when we have people from out of state that have already had licenses and careers in real estate for several years, they're eager to take this course right away because they know the knowledge is power. It might not seem that way because you might be a little discouraged that the concept that knowledge is power with this first thing here, but understand that this knowledge is the knowledge the state deems necessary to trust you with a real estate license. And comparatively speaking to most other states, the burden for the state of Florida is extremely low. We're one of the easiest states to obtain a real estate license in. And we also have mutual recognition agreements with several other states. So maybe get your Florida license first and then see what other states you want to get licensed in based on what you might be doing. Or also understand that you can only be in one place at a time until you're a jet-setting millionaire, being able to hop from city to city and do these top deals like Ryan Serhant on whatever TV show he's on. He's got multiple licenses in multiple states, and that makes sense for him. But if you just have one license here in Florida, you could still be tied to business around the world in the form of a referral. Because even if you're practicing real estate full-time and normally you're servicing clients, you could still be referring out leads that are outside your market, leads that you don't have time for, leads that don't make sense with your business plan. You might say, well, I've got a friend that needs to rent a property. Well, that friend that needs to rent a property is going to be a time-consuming deal, which if you're just starting out, this can be a great way to get your foot in the door, to establish a relationship, and hopefully someday, before they renew that lease, they are going to want to actually buy a home. And it's your job to follow up, because if you don't follow up, they're going to go to somebody who does follow up. And you're going to learn about that concept of follow-up. I almost picked up this book here, because you actually do learn about follow-up in chapter 1. And follow-up in terms of this chapter, this is another perfect example of why this information will steer you wrong in terms of actually building a real estate business. Because one of the concepts in here that's not about law at all is about follow-up. And the Florida Real Estate Commission's definition of follow-up, as per this course, is what's done after the sale. Now, when I speak to you as a broker, as a salesperson, follow-up is what you do whenever you're remaining in contact with people. So that could be a little confusing there, and that's more how follow-up is going to be framed in this post-licensing course, because that rental deal is going to involve an extreme amount of follow-up for it to make sense for you profitably over time. Because you can get referrals from that lead, and eventually someday they hopefully will buy their own home. But once you've elevated yourself to a certain level of business, you might find yourself in a situation to where you might think you have to turn away that business. You know, I'd really love to help you out, but I'm just so busy right now, I don't have time to do rentals. I know you might be buying next year, and I really wish I could help you out, but let me tell you what, I know I don't have time for this year. It's not quite my specialty in rentals, but let me get you connected with someone from my team, someone from another broker, whoever it is, somebody with a real estate license who can service that client. Because again, if you're starting out, this might be a great place to start out. You know, there's somebody that my wife actually just helped get into a rental back in January, and they just bought a house. They just went under contract in July. So 6 months, 7 months is the time that went by, and he went from buying to owning. And that's because he previously was a homeowner, and renting just didn't feel right to him. And so he only signed like a 7-month lease agreement in the first place. And then he went and bought, I think it was like a $900,000 home. So that's where a little commission from a rental deal could turn into a big commission, a big deal. But one of the top tips I have to give people on a regular basis, especially real estate professionals, because as a real estate professional, you wear a lot of hats. And there's a certain mindset that you do have to do it all. But there's something you need to understand, and that's that you cannot do it all. One of the things that you will need to be able to grow to your highest levels is a team. Whether that's a team of agents, whether that's just your assistant. That's where it usually begins. It usually begins with you having some sort of real estate assistant to help you with your paperwork, maybe, help you with incoming calls. Whether they're licensed or unlicensed is going to dictate what they can and can't do. But you could hire a licensed assistant, and now they can do almost anything, pretty much anything you can do. And you could do that as a sales associate. You could build a real estate team as a sales associate. Or when you're ready to take it to the next level, you go get your broker license. And just like this course, is make it or break it for your real estate career. It's much more make it or break it here because this is when you're first getting started, when you're first figuring this out. But post-licensing for brokers is going to also be very valuable and beneficial information for someone who's considering opening a real estate brokerage. There's actually 2 30-hour courses that you do for brokerage post-licensing, and one of those is on brokerage management, where you're literally learning how to manage a brokerage office. What better information to have as a real estate broker instead of a slightly more detailed version of this? That's right, your broker course. If you've been intimidated about getting a broker course, please understand that it's just a slightly more detailed version of your sales associate pre-licensing. The same laws, the same rules, with just a little bit deeper dive into them, a little bit more detail, and a few other little topics scattered throughout. But the similarity between your sales associate 63-hour pre-licensing and your 72-hour broker pre-licensing to get a broker license to where you can open your own office, the information is so similar, it's crazy. It's so similar that a lot of our broker candidates will actually use our Pass First Try sales associate tools and then just make sure they're studying those extra little concepts that are just a little bit deeper in the broker pre-licensing course. But it really doesn't cover too many new topics. There's maybe 3 or 4 topics that aren't really covered in the pre-licensing course. But for the most part, it's the same topics with just a little bit more detail, a little bit deeper into that, with the testing being a little bit more advanced, but again, based around those same topics. So that's the reason why you might want to just stay as a broker associate, but take the broker course as soon as you can, which is going to be in 2 years. So think about how much further you could be ahead. Let's put a timeline on the board right here and just lay this out real quick of how much further you could be ahead if you're thinking ahead. If you're not thinking ahead, you might enroll in a course, enroll in your 63-hour pre-licensing, and you go complete that, and then you start doing exam prep after, and maybe you wait a little bit more time, and you eventually pass the exam. And then you're like, well, let's see if real estate works out to be anything. So 18 to 24 months from passing your exam, you're doing that post-licensing. And then you're like, and that's even if you get to this point here. Because again, if 18 to 24 months go by and you haven't been able to figure out real estate, let's be realistic here. How perseverant are you? How determined are you? Because if this goes on for 1.5 to 2 years, if you're not making any money, that's a problem. If you don't think it's a problem, I appreciate your optimism, and it might not be a problem for your situation because maybe you're not worried about practicing real estate. Maybe you got your real estate license, but you're just not sure what to do with it yet. And that's how you should be thinking, because this will help you become more sure of what to do with your real estate license. And you might decide that, you know what, I don't want to activate it. I do just want to keep my license. But either way, you will have to do that post-licensing by the deadline. But how much more could those ideas be worth if you accelerate that information to now? Rather than going to join a broker, which might have some sort of initiation fee, and you might have some initial costs like getting business cards or other things like that, buying signs for listings, getting open house signs, getting food for open houses, things like that, expenses that you have. And honestly, those are the expenses that are good, because if you're actually getting signs for an open house and you're buying food for an open house, that means you're having an open house. So, okay, things are on the right track. But if you go join the realtors and you're just like kind of sitting there wondering what to do with your real estate license still, that realtor's subscription is a subscription. And so you're just ticking closer and closer to your next renewal. And if you haven't figured out how to make any money, why would you keep the realtors? Why would you keep your real estate license? And that's a legitimate question. You might, again, see the value of having it, that for referral fees, I'll use it someday. Well, if you're not using it now, and that's because you don't know how to use it now, maybe let's not join the realtors right away. Let's hold off on activating your license with them and a broker, because if you don't know how to practice real estate, what business do you have activating your license to practice real estate? You could be honest with yourself. If you feel like this information isn't enough to help you know how to sell a house, you're right. You're correct. Can you learn the information to sell a house in other ways than learning post-licensing? Absolutely. But will it be more difficult lessons? Will it be harder lessons? Could you lose clients? Could you lose deals? Could you lose your reputation? Absolutely. That's all at risk, and you mitigate that risk by taking this course as soon as you possibly can. So accelerating that here, because let's say, again, you're enrolling in the 63-hour, which is your pre-licensing, the course to get your real estate license. You do the exam prep. You're not wasting any time. You pass your exam. You know, we'll say you even do it in the same amount of time. But now the difference being that if you do your post-licensing right here, you're ready to go. You're ready to start taking action. Or at least you've got enough of a plan to know when you'll be ready to start taking action. But let's say you're able to figure out enough to be able to be ready to, like, okay, this is the broker I want to join with. This is how I want to start marketing. I want to choose this as my farm area. And you could have all of this in place before you start paying for these different subscriptions, these different tools, all these other expenses to help you grow your real estate business. Ultimately, it is an investment, but you've got to make sure you're making a good investment. And this is what's going to help make you, as a real estate professional, a better investment. You're investing in yourself. Yes, you want to invest in your business, but you've got to invest in the captain of the ship, and that is you. It doesn't matter how nice your boat is if you don't know how to drive it. And that's where this comes in. This is showing you how to drive your real estate license, how to actually use it, the instruction manual, however it is that you want to think about that. And that's why, again, you want to take that as soon as possible, because then if you activate your license 24 months from now, you could upgrade to get a broker license. And so what that does there is it'll make the information from your pre-licensing, that remedial information that's going to be retested in your broker course, once you have 2 years being active with a broker, so you will have to join a broker if you do want to become a broker, but you'll learn more about that in the post-licensing course. You'll learn more about those next steps to continue growing and expanding your real estate business. And you might find yourself in a situation where 2 years in, it makes a lot of sense for you to have your own brokerage because you've figured out how to do it all on your own. You've gone through and done all this. And I don't mean that you've figured out the hard way. I mean that you went through, you did the training, you accelerated as much as possible so you actually have a successful real estate business and you no longer need the care and support of a brokerage. And that's where it makes a lot of sense to start your own brokerage. But if you're not quite ready to start your own brokerage yet, I still strongly encourage you to get that broker license because you could stay with your current broker as a broker associate. And you've got a lot more negotiating power as a broker associate. You've got a lot more clout, a lot more respect as a broker associate because you've achieved the same level of license that's required to open your own brokerage office yet. The only thing you haven't done yet is open your own brokerage office, and that's a broker associate. Now, when you are ready to open your own office, all you've got to do is a form, a application, a piece of paperwork with the state of Florida to open your brokerage office officially, and there you have it. You now have your very own brokerage, where the only person, the only entity you answer for is basically the government, the Florida Real Estate Commission and the rest of the government. But you've got no broker that is telling you what you can and can't do per the broker rules, because that's what you'll find, that there's all these Florida Real Estate Commission rules and laws that you learn about in your pre-licensing course, but then you'll come to find that the Association of Realtors, if you choose to join them, have all kinds of rules and requirements of their members of the association. And then you'll also find that your brokerage that you join will have its own set of standards, rules, and processes, requirements. And that's going to be essential at first as you figure out your career. But once you outgrow that, you absolutely should get your broker license. We have live classes of all of these here, whether you want in-person, live, online, or again, we have self-paced, on-demand programs available for all of these different curriculums. So any questions you have, any way it is that we can help you out, reach out to our advisors at 813-333-2676. Again, that's 813-333-2676. You can also find all kinds of great information online at tsre.us. That's tsre.us. But other than that, that's all the information I've got. It's not really all the information. I could go on all day talking about post-licensing, but we've been going for over an hour now, so we've got to wrap this up. But we'll be back next Friday 12 noon Eastern time. If you have questions about post-licensing, if you have questions about starting your real estate career, if you've got questions about tools that can help you bridge the gap between taking those two courses to help you pass the exam, we've got the Pass First Try exam prep strategy and all kinds of tools that go right along with that. So reach out to us. We're eager to assist you and help you in any way it is that we can. The phone number again, call or text 24/7, 813-333-2676. It's about all the time we've got for today. So thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of State of Real Estate, and I'll see you next Friday at 12 noon Eastern. So you just got your real estate license. How can you jumpstart your real estate business? The number one thing you should do before you do anything else is post-licensing. Now look, this is already a requirement, so you're gonna have to do it anyways, but here's why you wanna do it early. The sooner you do post-licensing, the sooner you're gonna learn the real-world concepts in post-licensing that will help you create a business plan, that'll help you plan for your success in real estate. Post-licensing is all about real-world topics that are usable, that'll help you grow your real estate business. And at Tampa School of Real Estate, we have the best post-licensing courses around. Find out more about how post-licensing can help you jumpstart your real estate career. Go to postflorida.com. Are you studying for your Florida real estate exam? If you are, you need to check out our Pass First Try strategy. You're gonna love this. It's 4 steps that we break down the process to study for your Florida real estate exam. So you're set up to pass your Florida real estate exam because that's what you're studying for, right? To pass your exam. It's 4 steps. Number 1, you learn the information. You've got to learn this to be able to pass the exam, but it doesn't stop at learning. Step 2, you've got to reinforce the basic, simple, key concepts. As you learn this information, keep reviewing the simple things. You don't need to know everything, but you got to review these basic key concepts. Step 3, you've got to test your knowledge. The exam's going to test your knowledge, so if you don't test your knowledge in advance, you won't find out if you know what you think you know until you take the exam. And then step 4 is be confident and prepared, because even if you know this material, you need to be confident that you know the material. Check out the full strategy at passfirsttry.com. That's passfirsttry.com. Have you been thinking about getting your Florida real estate license? Look, the process is probably easier than you think. We break it down step by step, how much it's going to cost, what it is that you need to do to get your Florida real estate license. Find out all of that and more at licensefl.com. Again, that's licensefl.com.
Powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
You are watching
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate.